So one of the things that the MDO is really great for is for EMI scanning. And so we have a little switching power supply. And if we look at the noise floor from the MDO, we can see that the noise floor is relatively low. And now we plugged in the power supply and you can see that there's a lot of wideband noise. Using an E&H large size near field probe, we can actually see the emissions coming from the power supply. And we can see that there's a relatively wide spectrum. We're starting at about 50 kilohertz and right now we're sweeping to 10 megahertz, though we could go further. And the MDO will actually go all the way up to 6 gigahertz in this model. So we can see the noise. And while this probe is very sensitive, it doesn't allow us to tell exactly where the noise comes from, other than from the power supply. Using other probes, like the smallest size E&H near field probe, we can actually identify where it is that specific noise sources are inside the switching power supply. So, for example, now you can see down at the lower frequencies it's coming from this quadrant in the power supply. And if we look for the higher frequencies, we can see that most of the higher frequencies seem to come from this quadrant in the power supply. It would be fun actually to open the power supply up in order to be able to see where the noise comes from. But using different size probes allows us to find out where it is that the noise actually comes from, and we can troubleshoot all the way down to, using this size probe, the trace level. E&H also makes other probes that are worthwhile for evaluating power supply EMI, but they also make probes that are E-field probes. And so, for example, this probe here can tell us where it is that most of the E-fields are. And you see again, those are the lower frequencies for the most part. Those are probably coming off the MOSFET. We also have a less sensitive E-field probe, which is just a stub probe. And it helps us to identify where it is that specific noise patterns are coming from. And so you can see we have both E fields and H fields on this side of the power supply. Whereas in this quadrant here, it's mostly just E fields. So between the MDO and near field probe sets, we can easily identify EMI sources and where they occur in power supplies. Let's take a look at a couple of others.